Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? So the Saints also had a new body at camp today in J.R. Sweezy. You probably by now have seen that the Saints signed J.R. Sweezy, a free agent offensive lineman who spent the last couple of seasons in Arizona, incidentally enough. He also had previously been with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You might remember J.R. Sweezy signed a free agent contract with the Bucs, a 5-year, $32.5 million deal with Tampa Bay. But injuries, he was released after just 2 seasons in Tampa, 2 injury-shortened seasons in Tampa. Sweezy, so there's a really interesting point here with J.R. Sweezy, because he, I believe, is clearly brought in to be this year's Nick Easton. And let me remind you that Nick Easton, a year ago, beat out the Saints' first-round draft pick, Cesar Ruiz, and Easton started 9 games a year ago for the New Orleans Saints at right guard. Now, Easton obviously had concussion issues, which is terrible, and likely is going to shorten his career. But this signing, to me anyway, is indicative of the fact that the Saints are still not convinced that Ruiz is ready to be a starter at right guard on this team. And Sweezy is one heck of an insurance policy. Now, the NFL is wild because, man, you are always trying to get better. What's the old saying? If you're not getting better, you're getting worse. There is no staying the same. So even though, can you imagine being one of those guys on the interior, a guy like an Ethan Greenidge or a Will Clapp, where you maybe feel like you've got your roster spot sewn up, and then here comes J.R. Sweezy, a guy who's he has started 104 career games and played in 117 career games at offensive guard. Interesting backstory for J.R. Sweezy. Started as a linebacker at NC State. Moved him to defensive line, where he played his college career. But Tom Cable, you remember Tom Cable? He was the offensive line coach in Seattle. Liked J.R. Sweezy, thought he had the technical skills to be an offensive lineman in the NFL, so they drafted him in the 7th round, turned him into an offensive lineman, and he's become a guy that started 104 times at offensive guard in his career. That's a hell of a find from Tom Cable in the 7th round. Now, played in Seattle from 2012 to 2015. Then he signed the big contract with Tampa Bay, but had an injury-shortened season there in Tampa. Returned to the Seahawks in 2018, where he started 15 times. Then went in free agency to Arizona, and he started all 16 games in 2019. And then last year had an injury which caused him to miss 3 games a year ago, but he ended up starting 10 times and played in 13 games last year for Arizona. So he's a guy who's been around the league a little bit, but has been in the league since 2012, played in 117 games, started 104 games, and by and large has been a pretty durable guy. So if he can stay healthy, he's being brought in clearly to challenge Cesar Ruiz at right guard the way Nick Easton did when he started 9 games a year ago, but ultimately had his career derailed because of concussion issues. I think we all assume the Saints starting 5 is set. And my assumption was that certain backup spots were solidified. Like, barring something unforeseen, James Hurst, because of his experience, is likely one of your backup tackles that's going to make this roster. Will Clapp is listed actually on the roster as a center, but we know can play center and guard, and because of that versatility and Cameron Tom no longer being here, my assumption is his roster spot is probably locked up. But this is proof positive that your roster spot is never safe in the NFL. I mean, could I imagine a scenario where Ruiz becomes the Will Clapp, the center guard swing guy that's the backup, and Sweezy is the starter at right guard, and if somebody goes down, Ruiz is the next guy up at either spot, sure, I could imagine that scenario. I don't know that it's going to play out that way, and honestly, what I would love to see is the guy you spent a first-round pick on actually develop into and give you a return on that investment as a starting player in the NFL. But when you bring in J.R. Sweezy, it's pretty clear you're looking at a guy who has experience being a starter in the NFL, again, who played in the NFC South, who your coach is familiar with, and is potentially being brought in to be that guy if the guy you drafted to be that guy in the first round can't. So when you look at the roster for New Orleans right now, I think you know you're starting 5 day one, barring some injury or something unforeseen. From left to right, you've got Armstead, Pete, McCoy, Ruiz, and Ramczyk. Now, last year, they kept 9 offensive linemen. That makes sense. Usually you have your starting 5, and then you have backups at guard, a couple of backups on the interior, and a couple of backups at tackle. So aside from the starters last year, they kept Greenidge, Kelly, Clapp, and Easton. Now, we know James Hurst ultimately got in that mix as well as the season went along. As of right now, you've got the 5 that I mentioned, Armstead, Pete, McCoy, Ruiz, and Ramczyk. And then your backups are Montano. Oh, I'm sorry. These are your backups on the interior. Not talking about the tackles. Just those that are either listed as offensive linemen or as guards or centers. Montano, Brown, Greenidge, Kelly, Throckmorton, and Clapp. Now, Clapp's actually listed as a center. But if your 5 are solidified, and I would think Hurst and Sweezy are probably going to win spots on this roster. That's 7. Now, I'm being presumptive there. But if Sweezy's healthy with all of his experience, if he can still roll, I think he's a good option. I mean, Sweezy right now is, let's see, he came into the league, he's in year 9. So you're talking about a guy who's just past 30 years old. But if you have your first 5, Sweezy, Hurst, Clapp could be another interior guy. I mean, Throckmorton, Kelly, Greenidge. They love Greenidge. I mean, he's a guy who's made the team the past couple of years. Could be on the outside looking in. I guess the point is the roster spots, those battles become even more razor thin. As if you've done nothing, if nothing else, what you've done is added real quality depth and pushed guys who have been your quality depth potentially out. You're never staying the same. You're either getting better or you're getting worse. And adding J.R. Sweezy, the Saints might have added a guy that's pushing a first-round draft pick to be a starter this year. Cesar Ruiz, it's time, man. It is time to live up to the prospects of being a first-round draft pick and earn that starting spot and push these other guys out. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.